very fortunate today to have Albert Bou Fadel on the Henry Harrison podcast, Entrepreneurs, Business, and Finance. Bo has a company called, make sure I pronounce it exactly right, called SmartBarrel, and he is the CEO of SmartBarrel and he's the founder of SmartBarrel. Hello, Bo. Hello, Albert Bou Fadel.
Hi,
That's a
Henry.
mouthful. Good to see you.
Yeah,
So you have this company. Why don't you give a brief description of the company? Because it's pretty innovative and I'd never heard of anybody else doing it. And I think people will be interested to hear.
sure. First of all, thank you so much, Henry, for having me. Excited for this chat this morning. And yeah, basically, Smart Barrel is labor management, timekeeping solution, specifically focused only on construction. We basically have a product suite that goes from hardware and software and mobile app to basically help a very basic yet very complicated problem, which is timekeeping and payroll on construction. So whether you have 50 workers or 5,000 workers, everything in between, we basically focus on those challenges and help contractor truly automate the whole data capture, timesheet, time approval, all the way down to payroll as seamless as possible.
And it's kind of cool. There's a picture of you put the equipment on a barrel sitting out on the job. And I guess the people that there it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, the name is very much misleading, right? So when we're in trade shows or we're talking to people, if you say smart barrel, it means nothing. And when you say smart barrel in construction, it's even more misleading. People wonder if barrel has to do more with like liquor. Are you like wine distributor? Are you cognac? Why is there a barrel in the name? The name is much, much simpler to explain. When we first started, basically, and we decided that the only way we can really tackle this problem is by having a piece of hardware on the job site to substitute literally the clipboard. So we knew we had a clipboard to replace. Mobile apps have a lot of pros and cons, but if you really wanted to like tackle this problem like fully and then basically tackle all the excuses, the headaches, the problems, all the complexity that the construction introduced in the function of capturing time, which is a very basic function, we really need to build our own piece of hardware. And we, of course, as every startup starts, we overcompensated and then we over-engineered it. And then it was a whole standalone machine like the one you see behind me, and it sits on a barrel. And the whole name was we turned barrel smart because we put a piece of technology on the barrel and nobody wanted dumb barrel. So we called it Smart Barrel. That was the whole thing behind it.
Well, for people that aren't in the construction industry, it's quite a challenge to keep track of lots of people coming and going that are paid by the hour. And for people that are, I have a story. When I first started, I went to work for a home building company and I was a trainee and they trained me and they had me do some grunt work. And for about a week, I was in charge of some day laborers. And boy, it was hard to keep track of them because some of them were great and they would we had a good crew with one guy that leading me and they got the work done. But if you had some bad attitudes, you find them sleeping when they're supposed to be working and you're wandering off in a different area or, going to get lunch when you don't even know they're gone. So that's my own small firsthand experience of how I can see that being a real challenge.
No, it's 100% spot on, and it doesn't end there, right? Like it's with scale, you get like home builder, you're dealing with probably like I don't know, a couple dozens of workers at most. You go a bit industrial, now you have a couple hundreds. Now you have multiple trades. Now you have 15 job sites. There's some job sites at 40 miles away. So you start losing control exponentially as your business grows. And it's literally the most complicated asset to manage. Out of every asset class that a company can own, like equipment, material, and labor, the complexity of managing humans is like exponentially higher, right? You're dealing with humans. There's the culture component, there's an age component, there's a ethnicity component, there's a language barrier component. I mean, there's a group of, I don't know, 200 men and women, but they have relatively nothing in common. They're working in the field, minimal supervision, no HR, no building, no IT basic stuff. So everything becomes exponentially more challenging. So where a lot of other industries, that restaurant or an industry or a building or an office that have figured it out throughout the years, because you have so many given elements that we don't have on a job site. As you start realizing that this is why we're in 2025, and this is still one of like the biggest problems of every contractor is really how can they control this asset class, because it's not a matter of everyone focuses on bottom line and being greedy or like focusing more, but it's really not that. It's like a survival mechanism, right? Like your labor cost is your biggest expense for every contractor. And there's a huge misconception in construction industry. It's a large ticket size industry, right? Yeah, you can sign $1 million contract, a $2 million contract, $20 million contract. That doesn't mean the margins are huge. Margins are still tiny. So 1, 2, 3 slip-ups from your labor costs or your bidding costs or estimate costs, and you're in the red automatically. You cannot recover. It's a high pace, a very, very, very merciless industry. So controlling your labor costs is not about making an additional $1 million in the bank. I mean, that's the goal. Hopefully everyone can make more money. But the starting point is that let's make sure we're not in the red so we have a company next year. So we're still in business. Like this is the bar. This is how low the bar really is.
And in addition, yeah, you need the work to be done. And if they're not there,
Exactly.
they're not going to be doing the work. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's direct correlation. Like it's absolutely direct correlation. It's not a matter, it's like you need to put 40 hours per head count per week to get this much output. So if you have 3 people at 40 hours, they're creating 3 months output. And that's how you plan your whole budget. It's not, it's very linear input to output kind of a relationship. So you start seeing very quickly when the input is 40 hours because you're spending 40 hours, but the output is worth 18 hours, and you start like getting freaked out. What is going on? And where is this gap going? So sometimes it's not as drastic. When it is this drastic, it's very easy to detect. But the problem is when you have 100 workers and they're all like 2-3 hours being lost in productivity over 18 months, this is when it starts piling up to seven figures worth of losses that you cannot pinpoint. It's very hard to like pinpoint. It's like, where is this bleeding coming in from? And why am I so close to getting into the red, even though it seems everything's working fine? Well, because you're paying for 40 hours of output, but you're barely getting like 35 of them. And then, or 37. But over 18 months, you start realizing this adds up very, very quickly. And then this basically threatens the whole contract being positive or negative.
So you saw the problem. You're established now. You've been in business over 7 years, according to LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
you were working in the construction business. You had been entrepreneurial because you founded another company as well in the glass space. But you saw this need, and that's a big step then to, okay, I'm going to actually create a business. I'm going to create this product. I'm going to get customers. How did that go in the beginning?
I think the beginning goes like far, far back. I think there's 2 things to note. First of all, I was like my father was an entrepreneur, and I think I was introduced to that concept as the status quo for a while, right? So this I have to give credit to that. Like I didn't necessarily read a lot of books. I didn't necessarily, I mean, I read a ton, but like all of them, I started reading them with the concept that like, oh, I am going to be an entrepreneur, because I thought this is like a career choice that everyone chooses. And that was the one I chose. So I've had this bug since I was young. And like a cookie cutter. High school, I had my hustles. College, I had my hustles. I did the juice business. I did the media agency. So every time I would start like kind of like a side business on the side. But the glass business that I started first was the really big one, where there were employees, there was liability. It wasn't side hustle. There was like a lot of liability, bank notes and whatnot. And what basically helped me survive through that first real endeavor was a tiny bit of like naivety, right? Like you have to really have a bit of belief in yourself and a bit of like dumbness, right? Like you don't really understand the full risk, and you're diving into them, and it's impossible to understand the full risk. Like you don't know what you don't know. This is 100% true in the first endeavor. In the first few endeavors, you're like going into something where you think you have a business plan of what, like 40 pages, but there's like 2 million elements that you have to navigate throughout the life of the business. So like it's impossible to de-risk the business. But I think in attitude is what's very important, right? It's a very much of like understanding that there's a lot of elements that you don't know, and then having maybe stupid belief that you just figure it out. You'll just figure it out. And I think this has been the ultimate fuel of very quickly realizing that I don't know what I don't know, but backing it up by I'll just figure it out. And figure it out doesn't mean I'm so smart, I'm just gonna like figure it out by closing my eyes. It can be by a network you develop, by asking help from people, by Googling, by researching, by studying, having advisors, having friends, like, but you just figure it out no matter what. Whether you throw money at it, whether you throw more hours at it, whether you throw people at it, doesn't matter. And hopefully you're lucky enough to not have one huge problem that puts you down, but a lot of small ones, and you just survive them. This was kind of the first one. So I basically went through a very, very steep learning curve in the construction and glazing industry. I walked into it knowing nothing. And then within basically 6 months to a year, I was like kind of running it, a glass factory and an aluminum. So we do window wall, curtain wall, sliding glass door panels, and we process our own like glazing in-house, which I mean, everything was a learning curve. There's not one place you can turn in the business, whether it's from finance or accounting or legal or contracts or architect or selling or manufacturing or support, or I mean, everything was new, like everything. Power was an issue. You had to do a whole sort of calculation to understand the plant capacity from a power consumption. Can you handle 2 shifts? Can you handle a shift? And it's just enough grit, and then you plow through. And then I started getting very comfortable, and then I was really on a track building kind of like my reputation in the glazing industry. And then while working on many, many projects, I started realizing that labor cost is really what makes or breaks a contracting business. Really, like it's the biggest variable. You can have an amazing estimating team, an amazing manufacturing team. You deploy those goods to the job site. If there's no great coordination, no great skilled workers, you can blow through. It's like a sieve. Labor spending is like a sieve. There's no too much money you can spend. No matter how much you put into it, it can drain it out. And this is where one thing led to another. First, I was using paper clipboard. Then I said, I'm going to use tech, and I started procuring tech. I personally tested maybe 14 different solutions: fingerprint scanners, hand scanners, wearables on the belt, iris scanner, like you name it. I would pilot them, I would buy them, I would test them, and nothing worked, because you start realizing that the technology is not necessarily the problem. The industry is very, very challenging. It's very unique. There is nothing like construction, hence why it's construction. Manufacturing is not like construction. Restaurant business like construction. Offices are not like construction. Manufacturing is not like construction. Construction is like construction. And you start realizing that you really have to be an insider for a long time to understand really how to like navigate this problem. And that's kind of how I decided to basically do a second chapter of my life, which is really diving into solving that problem, which in my mind seemed huge, still is, and obviously seemed like a difficult problem, but definitely worth tackling. Because if I were to start tomorrow a new glazing business, like I still have one of my biggest anxiety is controlling my labor costs. So I needed to find a solution that really like solved that problem, and dove into that world.
Well, that's terrific. What's an example of one of the challenges that you popped up that you didn't know about, didn't expect, and that you were able to solve the problem, get past it?
Uh, it's impossible to name one. I can name a few. To name one is like, I don't know,
There's one a
probably
day.
harder than, yeah, probably harder than all the challenges. But like probably there are few that kind of they can come like at top of my head. First of all, is realizing how hard hardware is, right? So like you think of a product, you think of an idea, and then I sketched it, I drew it, and I'm like, this is how it will work, this is how it should be, this is amazing. And you go to start basically finding someone to build it for you. And you start realizing very, very quickly there's not one person that builds hardware. There's many, many people that build hardware. You have the plastics, you have the electronics, you have the firmware, you have the code, you have the cloud, you have the testing, you have the labs. And this is all without even having a web application. Then there's a whole like the web application or the mobile application that you have to build that interact with your technology product. So this was kind of like a big, big learning curve. And I start sending requests for those prototyping companies, and they're sending me invoices to just look at my project with 6-7 figures, like a couple 100,000. And I'm like, you guys are crazy. Like I don't have like, I have to sell a kidney to like basically afford you guys. And you start realizing, okay, I can't afford professional company to like build my product. So maybe I can learn and do it myself. And the first thing you learn is that there's a reason why the first 4 letters of hardware are hard. And it is very hard. It is very, very hard. It's way more expensive than you think. Iterations cost a ton of money. Stability is a problem. When you're coding in a software, you have a bug, you like fix it, save the file, and redeploy it. This is the length of the bug fix. In electronics, your board catches fire, you go make fixes on screen computer, you compile the file, you ship them, takes you 1-2 weeks to get another board, test it out, and maybe catches fire again, maybe it's not. So like everything is more expensive, everything takes more time. So this was kind of one of the biggest obstacle, is really with no real professional hardware experience, trying to bootstrap a hardware startup. That was probably one of the toughest. I mean, you reminded me like 4 times a day to give up. Like, what am I doing? How am I going to be able to pull this off? And that was probably one of the biggest, definitely, like, challenges from the product perspective. And then, of course, like, you survive through the small wins every now and then, and as you accumulate wins, you go through them. This has definitely been. The second one was probably fundraising. You read all the news, you go on TechCrunch that everyone's raising 20 million, 60 million, 50 million, 20 million, and you're like, oh, how hard can it be? I just want 500,000. And then you realize very quickly that fundraising is it's a skill, it's an art. There's a lot of moving parts. You need to know what you're doing. And this by itself, even though it seems that it's taking energy and time away from building the business or building the product, because you're getting the money to fuel your business plan. The business plan is not to get money, but then you really need to like learn how to raise and all the moving parts that go with raising and the games of raising. And that's why there's endless books here and the art of fundraising and whatnot. And it's a whole skill set that you have to acquire very, very, very quickly, because it's not a numbers game. It's not a lottery. It's a lot of work and grind and fingers crossed. And then you land someone that believes in you. And then you have enough capital to make moves in the business.
So now you've been in business for, as we said, over 7 years. You have a number of clients. You have a whole team. Tell me a little bit about the current business right now and what your clients look like, where they are located, how they come to you, because now you're a success.
I mean, success in business is hindsight, right? Getting to success is easier than maintaining success. So I think the growth and the maintenance are the real challenge. We have a couple hundred customers. Our customers are mainly specialty trade contractors or like subcontractors. So think of your electrical contractor, mechanical contractor, drywall, concrete, plumbing. They're really the engine behind the workforce, right? So a general contractor might win a mid-rise, high-rise, but then they sub everything up, right? They're going to go and hire a concrete contractor, masonry contractor, a drywall contractor, tile contractor, kitchen cabinet contractor, and those are the companies who really own or have the workers show up and do the work. So we basically sell at the subcontractor level. I need to double check this, but I think we're 100% in all the states in the US. I think we're everywhere. I know for a fact we're in Alaska. I know we're in Hawaii, we're in Puerto Rico, we're like in all the states. We're also in Canada. So our entire focus is North America. And we basically have contractors from all sizes, from as small as like 50 to 100 workers and as big as a couple thousand. And basically what we do is we help connect to their payroll software, to their HR software and their ERP. So if they have CMIC, Procore, Vista, yada, yada, and then we make all this data flow from the field to their payroll software seamlessly. That's kind of how we help them out. The company is mainly based within Miami, just because I was working construction in Miami, and that's how I made this shift. So we're based here in Miami. We have another satellite office in Toronto, Canada, and the team is split between the two mainly offices.
So someone comes to you, how fast can they get going with your solution?
Depends on their setup, but it can be, I mean, if they're really aggressive, it can be 2-3 days. And if they need some like customization on their end, it might take a couple of weeks. But we usually have a very, very high turnaround. Like people can be up and running because the whole product was built upside down. It wasn't built office to field, it was built field to office. So which in construction is like a very wide pyramid, right? You might have one CFO but 600 workers. So to implement it to the one CFO, it takes nothing, but to implement 600 workers takes forever because you have all these different projects or the different foremen or the different structures of the site. This is in a building, this is outdoors, yada yada. So we built it with focusing on the hardest part of construction. So because of the seamless integration that we have in the field, it makes the implementation flow up very, very easily. Versus most other like companies or they do what seems at face value the correct thing to do is they build the software with the check writer in mind. So who is the check writer? The worker is not deciding on a timekeeping solution. The worker has no clue. So they build all the features and the benefits and the software based on the account manager, the project manager, the CFO, the payroll admin. So it's phenomenal for them. But then when you go down, it's like you can tell from the way the philosophy of the product is that the worker was the last person in mind. But we built it kind of the other way around.
My experience in construction, I actually had a home building company, and I definitely think that there's so much experience that you have to have from the field.
Yeah,
So
it's
that
impossible.
really resonates with me. It can't be some software guys in a room. They may be real smart. They're just going to miss so many things that are just practical. And I mean, I got some advice when I got my first construction job. And as I said, they put me in training and I was basically out in the mud. And my dad talked to a friend who was in construction. He said, best place he could start in the mud, in the rain, out in the field, seeing what's going on, working with the contractors. And sure enough, it was. So you obviously had that. So you had that knowledge that you could apply. And I'm sure you've learned and improved, as time has gone on, and continuous improvement, as you say, maintained and grow and everything else. Do you have a direct competitor?
We probably have a lot of competitors. I mean, like we didn't invent timekeeping. A paper gripboard is a phenomenal competitor. Here's one. This is this is like an amazing competitor, right? This is cheap. This is has no cost. This is like bilingual, trilingual. You want to make any
That's why
adjustments?
I
So
said
like,
direct competitor, like someone that's
yeah.
doing something similar, or
No, no one is doing this approach. What most of the industry has accepted and settled in is if you want to upgrade from paper timesheet, there's something called crew time entry, where someone will basically take an iPad or a software, and then basically the foreman will put all the workers' hours on a daily or weekly basis. This didn't settle well with me because I still think I'm bottlenecked by that foreman, right? So like I'm moving the liability from myself from the paper to the foreman, but now the foreman is my bottleneck. And this is kind of what we wanted to bypass. So our software is that the worker checks in, the worker checks out, it auto-populates all the data. There's almost minimal to zero intervention needed to capture the time. Whether it's 2 a.m., 2 p.m. on a pour, whether you have 50 workers, 500 workers, or even three. This was the whole philosophy behind it. So in that space, I don't know if we have any direct competition, but mainly our approach is very unique in that sense. Like every time we're speaking, we have to pitch people off. Yeah, I know you're used to this, but we do it the other way around. And then it does actually work. Because there's a trust factor. This industry is very scarred from tech and people being like sold a lot of flashy stuff that when you go to the field doesn't work. And the biggest problem in industries like us and a lot of like new entrepreneurs tend to miss this concept. And it like drives me nuts because everyone's trying to gauge their risk from the client based on the investment they're putting in the company. Let me put it in an example. If we are a $10,000 software a year, the whole argument is that, Henry, why are you worried? It's only $10,000 a year, right? Like worst case, doesn't work, you blew $10,000, who cares? But what people miss is the implementation of a failed software. The damage goes far beyond the $10,000. You might have reputation damage. You might burn bridges with colleagues. You might have a manager that says, hey, this is not going to work. And you're like, trust me. You might have below you peers that lose respect to you. It might cost you a promotion. It might cost you a demotion. You might be the joke of the company, no construction. You might be for the next 10 years called, oh, you're the guy who introduced that stupid software. And we told you it's not going to work. So the 10,000 is like nothing. Really nothing. So when you're sitting in a lot of like those discovery calls and there's a lot of skepticism on the other side, a lot of founders I see, like early day founders, they're trying to fight from the money perspective. I'll give you a discount. He would pay $2,000 more. It's not the price. The price is not an issue. The price is an issue always in the absence of value. Like this is it. The price is never an issue. But what you're missing is that all those questions of like, what about this? What about that? How do you handle this? How do you handle that? What if this doesn't work? All this skepticism is not coming from a money defensibility. It's coming from a de-risking defensibility. They're genuinely worried this is gonna like make them look like the bozos or lose their job or lose the comfort of their position because nobody gets penalized on missed opportunities. Right. This is probably one of the biggest flaws in business is that if you didn't upgrade to the next service, you're not penalized. If you upgrade to a failing one, well, you're gonna be beaten with a stick on your head. Right. So people there's a bigger tendency to have people just keep the status quo working because nobody's going to come after you. If everything's working smoothly and everyone's working as expected, that's good. Innovating, taking risks, you tend to get penalized. So this is the risk that we're fighting against. We're trying to sit with people who are like, listen, why would I even open this kind of form? Like, it's not my dad's business. Like, if we save 6% more on labor, what's in it for me? So those are the people that you have to say, listen, like, it's a better quality of life. You're going to retain more talent. You're going to have a better work experience yourself. Your workers are going to have better experience. I mean, there is endless benefits from automation, but you have to show them how true is this delivery. And it's not like a wishy-washy dream that you're selling them that they will never see, and but it's more tangible and they can live this dream in like 6 weeks or 4 weeks, and not be like, oh, like in 5 years you'll be there.
A lot of the construction solutions too can take a long time to implement.
Yeah.
And then the people that are trying to do it can't get the hang of it. And everybody just throws up their hands and say, let's go back to the old way. That was working okay.
Yeah,
So it
we
seems
we
like this is
we
fairly straightforward implementation.
and it's all by design, you know, in the early days. And this is what was interesting in my early days. So I'm someone who had like his alarm 5:30 a.m. almost most of my adult life, not because I was like doing push-ups and motivation speaking, because I had meetings on job site at 6 a.m., right? Like the search engine sometimes stutter. So it's not like because I was on TikTok, like being an inspiration. No, I had to wake up because I had to be like on a job site in a trailer with my Dunkin' Donuts coffee at like 6 a.m. And I moved from this to tech, right? So like I quit glazing, I go into technology, and people are showing up 9:30, good morning, and I'm like losing my mind. I'm like, what do you mean good morning? It's like noon. So I'm still like going this transitional phase, but what allowed me to see is the two sides of the industry, right? So as I start hiring engineers and we're building technology, you start seeing how a normal consumer thinks. And I would go and say, no, we cannot have a support line. It has to work anyways. We cannot have a 6-step installation process. It has to be more intuitive. And they're like, what's wrong with you? Like everything else works, like scan QR code, configure it. I'm like, no. In construction, there's zero. It has to just work. I'm like, this thing fails twice. The third time it'll be in the pond. They throw it in a lake. Like, you don't understand. Like, it's high friction. We don't have the luxury of fucking up. Like, we don't have it. And this was introduced in the company many times, and we'd have conversation. And this is basically how we built up our kind of like slogan.
There you go.
So we built it up in a way because it's like always like the technology cannot fail. Like, we cannot take shortcuts. There is no scenario in the world where I'm going to have your PM or foreman go watch a 6-minute YouTube video on how this works. Like, in what world? They won't do it. They would watch a minute, they'll turn it off, they'll go install it. It doesn't work. They'll call the PM or the director of operation 3 times a day saying, this shit doesn't work, this shit doesn't work. And the guy will be like, just drop it. Just go back to paper. Like, we don't have the luxury. And this is what a lot of people also miss. It's like, oh, we have like a 6 weeks implementation. I'm like, well, good luck, buddy. I don't know who has the bandwidth for 6 weeks.
Well, you are obviously having a great time with your business, even with all the challenges. You've got a real
Yeah.
positive attitude and enjoying it. All right, you live in a beautiful part of the world. You got beautiful ocean around you. Do you have some fun things just to wrap up? Some fun things you do when you're not working?
Yeah, I wish I could do more, definitely. So even though I am probably a few miles away from the beach, I barely see the beach or the ocean, which is very unfortunate. I have hobbies that fluctuate, but one of the biggest passions that I have, and I wish I had more time to dedicate for it, is I love sailing. And what I've found interesting in sailing versus fishing or motorboating or whatever is that it keeps you busy all the time. Like, if you want to move, you have to stay on top of it and figure out the sail and the wind and navigate, which is probably one of the rare activities where I can be physically away from an electronic device. Because I mean, it's not practical to have a laptop or cell phone or whatever, but also it's keeping your eyes, your head, and both your hands like technically busy at all times. So from a true disconnection, probably someone who becomes a bit obsessed and drowning with work, you need something that fully like pulls you out. And this has been one of the only things that can take me 3, 4, 5, 6 hours and force me into a full disconnect when it's like more peaceful and there's no engine roaring and it's just the wind and the waves. And I find it to be one of the most efficient ways of really disconnecting without purposely putting effort into disconnecting, just forces you into it.
Sure, because it occupies your mind on something else. You don't want to
Yep.
drown and you want to keep moving. So
Exactly.
you got to manage the sailboat.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, hey, that is really terrific. Well, I can't tell you how interesting it is and fun to hear what you're doing. So, Mr. Albert Bou Fadel, thank you very much for coming on the show. And I think that the construction world should look closely at SmartBarrel if they're not already on board with you yet. They should get there soon. So thanks a lot for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of
You bet.
fun.
Great.